A 7mm Remington Magnum for a friend of mine, Nick Tacito. David is going to help me out in terms of zeroing the rifle and shooting it at the range. We're doing a load development using the Barnes LRX 145 grain lead-free bullet. And I always refer to the bullet manufacturer's reloading manual. I shoot the same powder matched to the bullet, or in other words, one manufacturer of 150 grain or 180 grain bullet, the bearing surface and the pressures that that bullet may produce are different than that of a different manufacturer. So the best way to load is to follow the specific manufacturer's reloading information as best you can. And that information may be limited in terms of powder selections, and you may have to kind of go off on your own on the charts. And to do that, you will need to learn what the basic fundamentals are of safety practices in hand loading, and start at minimum load levels for development and work your way up, looking for pressure signs and things of that nature. For this demonstration and video, though, I will not be wearing my glasses because I'm trying to minimize the glare that may reflect back into the camera. Already worked up the powder charge in half grain increments until we found the most accurate powder. Now that we found the most accurate powder, the next step that we're going to demonstrate is seating the bullet and adjusting it by 0.010 of an inch at a time. That will also aid in shrinking the group and making a tighter group pattern. Barnes recommends to start the seating depth somewhere between 40 and 70 thousandths of an inch off the lance. And it only takes one, maybe two squirts, no more than that. And then I use a 1 gallon Ziploc bag works really well also. You know, just anything to contain it. You want it to be nice and clean. Mix it around a little bit. That's all you have to do. Take it out of the bag and wait 2-3 minutes for the lube to dry. Okay, this is a 2-die set. CBS. They're full-length resizing die. So we're going to set up the full-length resizing die right now. At this time, important thing is to make sure that the deep priming pin is out about 3/16 of an inch, or just so that the bottom, where you see this on the internal portion, is back enough so it's not hitting the base of the case. You want to run it all the way down into the shell plate till you make contact. Once you make contact, you want to lift up the arm just a little bit, run the die down about 1/4 to 1/2 a turn, and that should be set. So what you want is this to cam over. So when you run it into the die, it hits the base of the die, and then the arm just slightly cams. That's a perfect die adjustment. The headspace is right where the shoulder meets the corner of the cartridge on the edge. So the halfway between the case bottleneck here and this shoulder is where you're measuring headspace. Measure the headspace. I use this gauge that goes on the set of calipers, and it works in the same fashion as the bullet comparator, only this is measuring the headspace at the shoulder. We want to move it about 0.003. Run it up into the die, all the way up and all the way out. Now we're going to check it again after resizing it to see if we've minimized or constricted the case a little bit. Okay, we moved it 0.003. That die is set just perfectly. Next is to trim the brass to spec. Refer to your reloading manual for the proper spec. Primer pocket uniforming is an important part of the process. We do that one time in the life of the case. Using the Frankfurt Arsenal Case Prep Center. This is the trim to length right here. It's already been adjusted. So I trimmed it, and you can see right here that it's trimmed pretty good. So next thing we'll do is we'll deburr the outside, we'll ream the inside. Primer pocket uniform the inside here so the primer sits evenly. So the inside looks just like that, you can see it. And we'll finish the rest of the brass. We'll do it all the same way. Primer brass now, and I'm using the Lee priming tool, a handheld, and we can feel the kind of pressure that we're putting so that we get a consistent seat on our primer. So you just insert it into the press, run the ram up like this, makes full contact, and we take it out, and it's perfectly primed right there. So we usually check it right here to make sure that we're below the surface, and it's seated perfectly. The next step is to set up our Hornady auto charge for the proper charge weight. As you can see in setting up the powder charge, I leave the bottle of powder sitting right next to it so that we don't mix powders by accident later down the road. We're using RL22 powder in the powder measurer, and so I have the container put to the side. That way there's no question which powder we're using. The powder measurer has been turned on and it's been sitting here for about 15 minutes warming up. We'll remove the protective cover. We don't need this while we're measuring the powder charge. We'll make sure our powder pan is clear and clean. We'll put this powder pan to the side for now, and then we'll calibrate the scale. So first thing we will do is we'll zero the scale. And the next thing that we'll do is hit calibrate once, and then hit it a second time until you get some dashes. When it gives you the number for the calibration weight, go ahead, put the calibration weight on, hit calibrate, wait, it gives you some dashes, and then it'll give you another weight. So we'll grab the second weight, put it on, and we'll hit calibrate one more time. We are now calibrated and the scale is ready for accurate measure. Next step is we need to enter our charge weight. In this case, we hit 610, which stands for 61.0 grains, and then we hit enter. Okay, the next thing you do is just simply press the dispense mode, and it'll start dispensing powder. We've dispensed the correct amount of powder. The scale is set up. Let's try it one more time. We just want to make sure when we get into a routine, let it stabilize, and it'll start dispensing. Now that we have the proper powder charge, we're getting ready to insert the bullet. And just to show you what we're using today, the Barnes LRX bullet, 145 grain, 2.284 diameter. And there are a couple knurls in there, and that's to minimize bearing surface. The bullet's much longer than a lead bullet, and to stabilize the bullet in flight and not foul the barrel. That's what these grooves are for. So, no further ado, let's go ahead and set up the die. Okay, to set the die up correctly for the seating die, back the seating stem off a few turns, and then go ahead and run it into the die. Just get it started, don't put it in all the way. Take a piece of brass, put it into the shell holder, and run it all the way up to the top. Now, run your die until you hit the case mouth. Once you hit the case mouth, then back the die off about a half a turn so that you don't make contact. We're not crimping the bullet in this case because the bullet we're using has no cantilever. and good. It's an excellent bullet for long range. Now what we'll do is I've run this screw down to the proper length of the bullet, and I'm going to back it off about 10 thousandths for the next round. So we just slide the bullet in here like so and slowly run the ram up there. And we'll check our overall length. For seating the die properly, we're going to use a bullet comparator from Hornady, and this here we put onto our calipers measures to the ogive of the bullet, and the ogive of the bullet is where the bullet starts to taper off. So where it's the most concentric or the largest diameter of the bullet, just before it tapers, it is what we're measuring. Now that we seated the bullet, let's check the overall length and see if we've made it to spec. We have to spin the bullet in place here to make sure that it's square to the caliper. And indeed, it is to spec. Okay, we've now completed our test rounds. I have 4 different loads, 3 rounds each load, and I moved it up 10 thousandths at a time, trying to find that sweet spot where the gun really likes the bullet and where it's seated. So let's go to the range. David's going to shoot, and we'll see which load is most accurate.
That's how we set up the grounding. Now we'll shoot our first test load. and 31 feet a second. You should allow 15 minutes between each shot segments for the barrel to properly cool down. Now we'll go back to the reloading room and make our final loads to zero the rifle.